Common nonsense. Or just common nonsense. Today in comic nonsense, we want to talk about the chicken and egg problem. Common nonsense is a segment where we take a look at something that people say a lot that is not true. Something that's commonly held that's not true. Now, there's actually a little bit of cool science involved here. But first, let's talk about the chicken and egg problem. The chicken and egg problem is not a problem. Anyone who's graduated from high school science should know that the chicken and egg problem has been long ago solved, the actual literal one. And we know that there have been eggs on Earth for millions and perhaps billions of years before chickens. And we know that the first chicken came out of an egg that was laid by not a chicken. Now, before we get into why that's true, and we know it's true, let's take a look at this little bit of science. It's from ScienceDaily.com from March 2nd, 2021. It says the chicken and egg problem, origin of life, the chicken and egg problem. Terrible title, because what really happened is tRNA, or transfer RNA, was replicated in a lab and was found, to replicate exponentially. Basically what it means is stable RNA was produced very easily in a lab, which demonstrated that in a heat vent in the ocean a billion years ago, it's not all that much of a leap to believe that RNA, to these reproducing like DNA and these kinds of things, reproducing molecules that all life is based on, could have spontaneously formed. Okay, there is no, for lack of a better term, chicken or egg problem. I like to call it the bootstrap problem. In computers, we call it the bootstrap problem, which is you need two things that depend on each other, and each one of them seems to need the other to exist. So how did the first one come to be? And so, let's see. This is in Munich, the Ludwig Maximilians Universität. I don't know exactly how do they say it. Has shown that slight alterations in transfer RNA molecules allowed them to self-assemble into a functional unit that could replicate information exponentially. It sort of means that they were able to create tRNA, and they were able to replicate themselves, and they're basically stable. They're not unstable in the sense that they were able to start replicating exponentially and not die out from mutations or something. So it says here we have the classic example of chicken and egg problem. Let's call it the bootstrap problem. Proteins are required for transcription of genetic information, but their synthesis itself depends on transcription. Okay, so these physicists found that minor modifications in the structures of modern tRNA molecules permit them to autonomously interact and form some kind of replication model which is capable of exponentially replicating information. This finding implies that tRNA could have been the crucial link between replication and translation in the earliest living systems. Okay, let's see. I highlighted this other thing here. Like the later steps in the evolution of life, the evolution of replication and translation, and the complex relationship between them was not the result of a sudden single leap. It's better understood as a culmination of an evolutionary journey. Okay. Here's another. Okay, I honestly don't understand exactly what all of this RNA stuff that this experiment was, but they showed that RNA can sort of be created in a lab or and be stable. Here's a picture from Wikipedia that shows a tRNA. It's sort of an intermediator between the messenger RNA and a peptide chain here that it's putting together, one of the proteins that they have to make. Okay, cool science. I don't exactly understand it, but cool science. Science Daily. Let's not call it a chicken and egg problem. Let's take a look at the chicken and egg problem. That's what this rant is supposed to be about. It's common nonsense. We know, obviously, it's the chicken and egg problem is more of a philosophical problem. It's been around since, I think, where did I see? Plutarch posed the question as a philosophical matter in his essay, The Symposiacs, written in the 1st century Common Era. Aristotle, writing the 4th century before Common Era, concluded that there was an infinite sequence with no true origin. Basically, it's saying the chicken and egg problem is a philosophical way of saying how do things begin that seem to be around forever. But the problem with literally saying the chicken and egg problem is we really, really know well that the eggs have been around since way before chickens. In fact, let's go back to the drawing board for a second. Eggs have been around for billions of years, whereas chickens maybe hundreds of thousands. Modern chickens, just a few thousand. Back before, so I'm going to draw something if you're listening. Here's land, here's water. Okay. Why does the water drop off like that? Okay. And there's land animals. Here's the chicken. It looks like a chicken. Here's a fish. Fish have been laying eggs. Even before there was land animals, fish had eggs. Even before there was fish, amoebas, little single-celled organisms, exchanged packets of DNA. They, evolved. As soon as life was around, it was swapping DNA. And at some point, a little bag of DNA was swapped from one thing to the other, and that thing started throwing little bags of DNA out there, and eggs were born. This is billions of years ago, before there were even animals on Earth. Fish laying eggs. Fish eventually evolved into things that walked on land, more like lizards. There's a little lizard tongue, and I don't know how to draw a lizard. I put antenna on the lizard. I don't think lizards have antennas. Okay, this is a lizard. They lay eggs. Eventually, lizards turned into birds. They lay eggs. Somewhere along the way, they branched off into mammals. They have internal eggs. This is a little cute mammal. they have eggs. So eggs have been around for way longer than chickens. But, so how did the first chicken come out of an egg? Well, the first chicken was born out of an egg that was laid by a proto-chicken. Something that wasn't a chicken. Of course, the difference between a chicken and the thing that came before, evolutionarily, before the chicken, is very slight. And it actually didn't happen one day. It happened over 1,000 years. Slowly, proto-chickens, other birds, started to become more like the chickens that we know of in one little aspect at a time over thousands of years, or at least hundreds of years. Just tiny changes that went from one bird into a chicken. So I guess you could say, if you really wanted to, there was one first chicken that is what we thought of as a chicken, but that came out of an egg that was laid by something that wouldn't be a chicken, a proto-chicken. And of course that species of proto-chicken eventually started from a proto-chicken that was hatched out of an egg that wasn't laid by its own species, is something that came before it, and all the way back to lizards and fish and protozoa or whatever. So there is no chicken and egg problem. Put more simply by Neil deGrasse Tyson, it says here, which came first, the chicken or the egg? The egg laid by a bird that was not a chicken. A more accurate answer on this Wikipedia page is the first amniote egg, that is a hard-shelled egg that could be laid on land rather than water, appeared around 300 million years ago. Let's see. In contrast, domestic chickens are descendants of red jungle fowl and probably rose little more than 8,000 years ago. Domestic chickens are actually made by humans through genetic engineering of a sort, not literal lab-based engineering, but the fact that we selected the fattest and tastiest chickens and turned red jungle fowl into what we know of today as chicken. By this number, 300 million years after the first egg on Earth, and probably 1 billion years since the first egg in the sea. Well, that's about that rant. So don't say chicken and egg. You know it was the egg. Let's call it a bootstrap problem, because we still cannot lift ourselves up by our bootstraps. As an aside, what was the red jungle fowl, I thought? Well, looks kind of like a chicken, but this, in fact, if you're looking at the picture I'm looking at, is a red jungle fowl, not a chicken. Did you know that chickens are from the jungles of Asia? This is Southeast Asia, red jungle fowl. There's also green jungle fowl, not green, notably. There's a little green on them. It looks like a rooster. All right. Gray jungle fowl, Sri Lankan jungle fowl, and here's a picture from Wikipedia of a current chicken. So, in case you were wondering, chickens are the descendants of jungle beasts of Southeast Asia. Good to know. And once and for all, the egg came before the chicken. Let there be no doubt. In fact, let me say it this way. The egg came before the chicken, motherfucker. So let's not pretend it's still an issue.